the outlaw biker world, life is run by a code. There is no handbook and no written rule. Break the code, and the punishment can end your life with a bullet from your own brothers. Today, we are looking into the things real one-percenters never do. And what happened to the men who did them, one-percenters never did. Rule 1. Never cooperate with law enforcement. On March 24, 1985, 5 members of the Hells Angels Laval chapter walked into a clubhouse in Sherbrooke, Quebec. They had been summoned to a party, and attendance was mandatory. Inside, gunmen were waiting. All 5 were shot dead, wrapped in sleeping bags, chained to cinder blocks, and dropped into the St. Lawrence River. And the men who killed them were not a rival club. They were Hells Angels. That massacre set in motion the greatest betrayal in the club's history, and it proves the first and most sacred rule of the 1% world. A real one-percenter never talks to the police. Not when he is arrested, not when he is facing life, not even when his own club has turned on him. A clubhouse can be rebuilt after a raid. Seized drugs and guns can be replaced. But a member who testifies cannot be undone because he carries the one thing no search warrant can find, the inside of the club, its orders, its votes, its bodies. Nearly every case that ever gutted an outlaw club was built on the word of someone who once wore the patch. The clubs know it, and everything about how they operate exists to stop it before it starts. A man cannot simply join. He hangs around for months, prospects for a year or more, doing the work while the club watches him and digs into his past. And at the end of it, membership takes a unanimous vote because one doubtful brother is one future witness. Club business never leaves the chapter. Not to wives, not to girlfriends, because cases begin with loose talk. And for the man who talks anyway, the clubs keep a final answer. When Yves Trudeau turned, the Hells Angels put $50,000 on his head. When a Hamburg angel known as the Butcher began talking to German investigators, his own chapter put a bounty on him and he fled to Brazil. A rat does not get to be an ex-member. He gets hunted. And still the rule keeps breaking, because the club's own violence keeps creating the men who break it. Trudeau was the club's deadliest weapon, 43 killings, the first Canadian angel to wear the filthy few patch, and he was on the death list for that clubhouse in Sherbrooke. He lived only because he had checked into rehab the week before. He came out to find his money gone, his bike gone, and a contract on his life. And the arithmetic was simple. Silence would only get him murdered in prison. So the club's executioner talked, and by the time he finished, 90 murders were solved and 19 Hells Angels were convicted, including the men behind the massacre. He had escaped. A decade later, it happened again, at the very top. Maurice "Mom" Boucher, leader of the Quebec Hells Angels, tried to push the rule further than anyone, to make cooperation impossible by making the justice system itself afraid. In 1997, he had 2 prison guards assassinated to show that anyone who guarded, processed, or testified against the Hells Angels could die for it. Tried in 1998, he walked free. But the man who had pulled the trigger for him, Stéphane Gagné, was caught facing 2 counts of first-degree murder, and the police offered him the one deal the code forbids. Turn on Boucher, and one charge disappears. Gagné took it, told a jury about the order and the congratulations that followed, and in 2002, the most feared biker in Canada went away for life, brought down by his own trigger man. The deadliest killer the club ever produced, and the most feared leader it ever had, and neither fell to an enemy. Both fell to a brother who talked. That is why the ugliest word in this world is not enemy, and not coward. It is rat. Rule 2. Never wear a patch you haven't earned. In December 2018, the United States government stood in a federal courtroom and asked for something no government had ever tried to take. Not money, not property, a patch. Prosecutors had spent a decade trying to seize legal ownership of the Mongols' colors because they understood something most outsiders never do. If the government owned the trademark, any officer could stop a Mongol on the street and strip the jacket off his back. To kill the club, you did not need to jail its members. You needed to take the patch. A federal judge ultimately refused, ruling that the patch was protected expression, but the case proved the point better than the clubs ever could. The most valuable thing an outlaw motorcycle club owns is a piece of embroidered cloth. That is why the second rule of this world exists. A real 1%er never wears a patch he has not earned. Because in this culture, the patch is not clothing. It is identity, rank, and history stitched together. It cannot be bought, and the process of earning it is designed to be brutal. A man hangs around the club for months just to be noticed. Then he prospects, a year or more of doing whatever he is told, standing guard in the rain outside parties he is not allowed to enter, while the club watches him and digs through his past. At the end, every member votes, and it must be unanimous. 1 no, and the years were for nothing. Only then does a man get the full colors on his back, which is why members treat the patch the way soldiers treat a flag, and why the fastest way to find trouble in this world is to wear one you have no right to. The clubs police it without mercy. When a man thrown out of the Iron Order for cowardice bought a counterfeit Hells Angels vest online and posted photos of himself in it to threaten his old club, real bikers made sure the Hells Angels knew within days. His details were passed around the scene, and he deleted himself from the internet and disappeared. He was lucky the story ended there. In club culture, an unearned patch is impersonation of the organization itself, and the understood consequences run from a beating to having the colors stripped off your back in public, the same humiliation clubs inflict on defeated rivals. Even other clubs' colors are sacred in this logic. When 2 visiting Zurich Hells Angels had their patches torn off during the Chelsea Bridge battle in London in 1970, the club's international president sent enforcers from California across the Atlantic because somewhere in the world, someone was holding Hells Angels colors they had not earned. And here is the part the clubs hate most. In the entire history of the outlaw world, the only men who ever truly got away with wearing patches they had not honestly earned were federal agents. William Queen prospected his way into the Mongols and received a full patch. J. Dobbins spent 2 years reaching the edge of Hells Angels colors. The ATF women of Operation Black Rain lived as club girlfriends for 3 years. But look at what it cost them. Years of their lives, inside the process, doing the work, passing the background checks, because the system is built so that the patch cannot be faked quickly by anyone. Even the United States government could not counterfeit its way in. It had to earn the patch to steal it. Rule 3. Never touch another member's colors. In the middle of the Laughlin Casino riot in 2002, while gunfire shattered slot machines and gamblers crawled under the blackjack tables, a witness saw a wounded man stagger across the floor and shove something behind a slot machine before he went down. Only when the blood spread did the witness understand what he had watched. A Mongol, shot and dying, had used his last steps not to find cover and not to find help, but to hide his colors so that no Hells Angel could take them off his body. That is what the vest means in this world, and it is why the third rule exists. A real 1%er never touches another member's colors, not as a joke, not in a bar, not to admire the stitching. The patch on a man's back is years of his life, a unanimous vote, everything he has proven, compressed into cloth, and in club culture, putting your hands on it without permission is putting your hands on the man and on every member of his club at once. Riders' own etiquette guide state it flatly. Touching another rider's vest is one of the most serious violations in the culture, the kind of mistake that gets the uninformed, in the polite phrasing of one club document, aggressively educated. And because the colors are the man, taking them is the deepest wound one club can inflict on another. It even has a name, depatching. When the Blue Angels ambushed 4 nomads on a Scottish road in 2018, they did not stop at beating the riders unconscious with hammers and iron bars. As Colin Sutherland lay on the tarmac, they cut his club waistcoat off his body with a knife. The beating was the violence. The cutting was the message, that the club whose name he wore could not protect even the cloth on his back. In the outlaw world, a man who loses his colors to a rival has suffered something worse than his injuries, and a club whose colors are being taken is a club being publicly declared unable to defend itself. That is why the rule holds even between enemies, even in peacetime, even over a casual touch. Every biker understands what the wounded Mongol at Laughlin understood as he bled out on a casino floor. The colors are worth more than the man wearing them, because the man belongs to himself, and the colors belong to the club. Rule 4. Never discuss club business with outsiders. In the mid-1990s, at the height of the Quebec Biker War, the Hells Angels planned something enormous. A car packed with a powerful bomb would be parked outside a Rock Machine clubhouse and detonated. And then the Angels would storm through the breach and gun down everyone left alive inside. The man assigned to park the car was trained on the remote detonator. The plan was set, and it never happened, because the police already knew. Every detail of it had walked out of the club and onto a detective's desk, carried by an informer named Danny Kane, who sat inside the Hells Angels' own circle. The bomb was never lit, and for years afterward, the Angels kept planning, kept talking, and kept losing without understanding that the war was leaking. That is the nightmare behind the fourth rule. Club business stays inside the chapter. What is said in the meeting stays in the meeting. What is planned on a run stays on the run. And none of it, not a name, not a number, not a complaint, is ever spoken to anyone who does not wear the patch. The rule has a blunter nickname inside the culture, the Pillow Talk Rule, because the clubs learned long ago that the leak is rarely a spy in a trench coat. It is a member talking to his wife, his girlfriend, a friend at a bar, someone he trusts in an unguarded moment, and that person talking to someone else. Loose words travel, and in this world they travel one direction, toward the police. The proof is in how the biggest cases against these clubs were actually built. The great infiltrations, Black Biscuit, Black Rain, the agents who prospected their way inside, all fed on the same thing, men speaking club business in front of people who should never have heard it. Every wiretap needs a reason, every warrant needs a source, and the source, again and again, traces back to talk. Even Lennoxville began that way, with word of the Laval chapter's stealing and drug use flowing out to other chapters until the whole club knew and judged and acted. Information inside a 1% club is ammunition, and the rule exists because the club cannot control who fires it once it leaves the room. So the code demands something close to a double life. A member is expected to be completely silent toward the outside world and completely honest inside it, opaque in one direction, transparent in the other. It is a hard way to live, and that is exactly the point. Every man who has ever broken this rule believed his one conversation was harmless. Danny Kane's handlers built years of prosecutions out of conversations just like it. Rule 5. Never get arrested in your colors. In October 2008, on the morning Operation Black Rain came down, the ATF held a press conference outside Los Angeles Police Headquarters. 61 Mongols had been arrested in a single sweep, and behind the podium, the agency laid out its trophies for the cameras. Rows of seized guns, motorcycles, and leather jackets bearing the Mongols' patch. The vests were displayed like captured battle flags, and that display was not decoration. It was the point. Every jacket on that table was about to become evidence. That is the logic behind the fifth rule, and it is the most practical rule on this list. A real 1%er does not get arrested in his colors, because in a courtroom the patch stops being an emblem and becomes an exhibit. A man arrested in his colors has handed prosecutors the one thing they otherwise have to work for: proof of membership. The vest ties him to the club, ties the club to his crime, and ties every other member to both, which is exactly how racketeering cases are built. Gang enhancements stack years onto sentences based on affiliation, and nothing establishes affiliation like a booking photo with a 3-piece patch on your back. The clubs know this so well that the rule appears in their own internal bylaws, seized and read aloud in court over the years, because the club understands that one man arrested in colors puts the entire organization's name in the police report, in the newspaper, and in the indictment. The Mongols learned how far that logic can go. When the government spent a decade trying to seize the club's patch itself, the entire case rested on connecting crimes to the colors, murders, and assaults committed by men wearing the patch, until a jury agreed the emblem itself was tied to the enterprise. The club survived that case by a judge's ruling, but the lesson was carved into the culture. Every crime committed in colors is a brick in a wall being built around the whole club, which is why, in this world, the vest comes off before trouble starts, and why the dying Mongol at Laughlin spent his last conscious steps hiding his colors rather than himself. The patch must never be in the photograph, never in the evidence bag, never on the body. A member can be replaced, a conviction can be served, but colors entered into evidence testify forever against everyone who wears them. Rule 6. Never confront a brother in public. In February 2004, the Hells Angels buried the president of their Dutch Nomads chapter with full honors. Members flew in from across Europe, the United States, Australia, and New Zealand to stand at the grave, and his tombstone was cut with the lightning bolt runes of a man who had killed for the club. To anyone watching, it was a brotherhood mourning its leader. What no one watching could know was that the men at the graveside had killed him. Paul de Vries had been murdered by his own club days earlier, and in public, the club showed nothing, said nothing, and mourned him like a hero. The dispute that ended his life never once surfaced where an outsider could see it. That is the 6th rule at its coldest. A real 1%er never confronts a brother in public. Whatever the grievance, money, women, rank, betrayal, it is never aired in front of outsiders, never argued in a bar, never visible to a rival or a camera or a cop. Disputes go inside, into the chapter meeting, behind the clubhouse door, and what comes out afterward is a united front, always. The reason is survival. A club's power in the outlaw world rests on the image of absolute unity, because rivals probe for cracks and police build cases in them. A club seen fighting itself is a club inviting its enemies in, and every investigator watching for a disgruntled member knows that today's public argument is tomorrow's informant. How far inside do the disputes go? The Lennoxville massacre is the answer. When the Hells Angels concluded that their own Laval chapter had become a liability, wild, drug-soaked, stealing from other chapters, there was no public feud, no expulsions announced, no warning visible to anyone outside. The club summoned the chapter to a party, and 5 men were shot dead, wrapped in sleeping bags, and sunk in the St. Lawrence River. The most violent internal dispute in the club's history was resolved without a single public confrontation, and the outside world only learned of it when the bodies surfaced. That is the rule's terrible logic carried to its end. The brotherhood the public sees is a performance, maintained without exception, and the arguments behind it are settled, in places no outsider will ever stand. For the ordinary member, the rule works on a smaller scale every day. A brother who embarrasses another in front of citizens has handed the club's enemies a glimpse inside, and the club punishes the glimpse, fines, demotion, worse, more harshly than the grievance itself. Because in this world, the argument is never the crime. Letting the world see it is. Rule 7. Never disrespect another club's territory. On August 12, 2007, a Hells Angel named Jerry Tobin rode down the M40 motorway in England, heading home from a festival. He worked as a Harley-Davidson service manager. He had spoken to no one, threatened no one, done nothing at all. A car pulled alongside him and 2 shots came from it, and one struck him in the head, and he died on the road. His killers were outlaws, and their reason fit into a single sentence. The festival Tobin was riding home from had been held on ground the outlaws considered theirs. That is the 7th rule, and more blood has been spilled over it than any other on this list. A club's territory is not a figure of speech. It is stitched onto every member's back, on the bottom rocker of the vest, the patch that names the state or country the club claims, and riding into another club's territory, wearing your own colors, is not travel. It is a declaration, one the club whose ground you have entered considers itself entitled to answer. In this world, territory is money. The drug corners, the clubs, the protection, and it is honor. And the two are enforced the same way. The entire history of the American biker wars runs through this rule. When the Mongols formed in 1969 and stitched California onto their bottom rocker, they were claiming the one word the Hells Angels had declared theirs alone, and the answer, when it came, was war. Hit teams on the highways, a chapter president machine-gunned off his bike on Interstate 15, bombs at funerals. 25 years of cold peace later, the same two clubs walked into the same casino in Laughlin, Nevada, and the unresolved question of who owned what turned a gambling floor into a battlefield. 3 men dead among the slot machines. The Nordic Biker War began the same way, with a Banditos chapter planted in ground the Hells Angels had ruled alone, and it ended with anti-tank rockets fired into buildings. Different countries, different decades, the same rule, broken the same way, answered the same way. And Jerry Tobin is what the rule looks like at its purest and most pitiless. He was not a spy or a rival commander. He was, to his killers, simply a man wearing the wrong patch on the wrong stretch of road. And that alone was a capital offense. 7 outlaws, an entire chapter, went to prison for a combined 191 years over his murder, and the price tells you what the territory was worth to them. In the outlaw world, a map is not something you read. It is something you can die for crossing. Rule 8. Never miss a mandatory run. In March 1985, the members of the Hells Angels Laval chapter received a summons, a party at the Sherbrooke Clubhouse, and attendance was mandatory. In this world, that word is not a suggestion, and the members knew it. Most of them went. 5 of them died there, shot dead by their own club and sunk in the St. Lawrence River. And the darkest detail of the Lennoxville massacre is what the summons itself reveals. The club used its own most sacred obligation, the mandatory call, as the murder weapon, because it knew that a member who valued his standing could not refuse to show up. The rule that binds the brotherhood together was the rule that walked the victims through the door. Because in a 1% club, when the club calls, everything else stops. Work stops, family stops. A mandatory run, a mandatory meeting, a mandatory funeral, these are the heartbeat of the club. And missing one is never treated as a scheduling problem. It is treated as a signal. A member who does not show is telling the club where his loyalty actually sits, and the club hears it. The penalties start small, fines, loss of standing. The vest handed over until the debt is paid, and they climb. Because a club whose members appear when convenient is not a club at all. It is a costume party, and the whole structure, the territory, the reputation, the fear the patch commands, rests on the certainty that when the call goes out, every man answers. And the Laval chapter is the proof of where the road ends when a chapter stops answering. Long before the massacre, the Laval men had been drifting, consuming the drugs they were supposed to sell, skipping their obligations, treating the club as a convenience rather than a command. The other chapters watched it happen and judged it, and the judgment was Lennoxville. The chapter that had stopped putting the club first was put last, permanently. It is the harshest lesson in the code's logic. The mandatory call is not really about attendance. It is a loyalty test administered over and over, for life, and the men who stop passing it stop being brothers. So when outsiders ask why a grown man drops everything, leaves work, leaves his family's dinner table, because his club called, the answer is in that clubhouse in Sherbrooke. In this world, showing up is not a courtesy. It is the whole proof of membership, and the one time you fail to give it may be the time the club decides what you really are. Rule 9. Never shake hands with a rat. When Yves Trudeau finished testifying against the Hells Angels, he did not go back to any life he had known. He was given a new name, a new identity, and a place in witness protection. And he spent the rest of his existence as a man who officially no longer existed. Even in prison, years later, he told a court there was nowhere they could safely put him, because in the hierarchy of inmates, informants, and sex offenders, each refused to be housed with the other, and the general population wants both of them dead. The most feared assassin in Canadian biker history had become a man with no country, no name, and no floor he could stand on. That is not an accident of the system. That is the rule working exactly as designed. Because the ninth rule is not about the moment of betrayal. It is about everything after. A real 1%er never shakes hands with a rat. He does not speak to one, do business with one, drink beside one, or acknowledge one, ever. No matter how many years have passed or how useful the man might be. In this world, an informant is not a person who did a bad thing. He is a different category of being, permanently, and any member who treats him as human is contaminated by the contact. The rule turns every rat into a walking quarantine zone, and the point is deterrence. A member weighing a deal with prosecutors must know that what waits on the other side is not just danger, but total erasure. The loss of every friendship, every room he was ever welcome in, the whole world that gave his life shape. And the clubs enforced the erasure with more than silence. When Trudeau turned, the price on his head was $50,000. When the Hamburg Hells Angel, known as the Butcher, began talking to German investigators, his own chapter issued a bounty and he ran to Brazil, an ocean away. And the club's reach was still the reason he cooperated further, because by then the police were the only protection he had left. Even suspicion is enough. The mere belief that a man has spoken to law enforcement has ended careers and lives in this world. And clubs have expelled decades-long members in bad standing, the designation that marks a man as an enemy, over a single statement given to police. Jørn Jonke Nielsen, who co-founded the first Hells Angels chapter in Scandinavia and killed for the club, gave a statement after an arrest late in his life. And the club he had built threw him out in bad standing after 40 years. No service outweighs the stain. The rule has one more edge, and it cuts inward. Because a rat is untouchable, the man who vouches for him, shelters him, or simply stays friendly with him is judged nearly as harshly. And so the code polices itself. Every member becomes an enforcer of the quarantine, watching not only for informants, but for softness toward informants. It is the coldest rule on this list because it asks for nothing violent at all. Just a hand kept at your side, forever, until the man in front of you understands he is already a ghost. Rule 10. The club comes before everything. On December 20th, 2008, Brad Goldsmith got married at a wedding chapel in Las Vegas. His bride was his high school sweetheart, pregnant with his child, and his father stood with him. Charles Pee Wee Goldsmith, 6'7", a former kickboxer, and the president of the Las Vegas Hells Angels. The ceremony went perfectly. The couple kissed and turned for the doors, and as the doors opened, another Hells Angel pulled Pee Wee aside and said 4 words. The Mongols are here. A rival club's wedding party was waiting in the same building for the next slot on the chapel's schedule. And Pee Wee Goldsmith, on his son's wedding day, in a room full of his own family, did not hesitate. He told his son to stay inside, and he walked out the door to fight. Brad answered that wherever his father went, he was going too, and followed him out. Within seconds, the screaming started. That is the 10th rule, and it is less a rule than the foundation all the others stand on. The club comes before everything. Before work, before personal plans, before family, before a son's wedding with the bride still holding her bouquet. Every rule on this list, the silence, the mandatory calls, the colors, the territory, flows from this single premise. that membership is not a part of a man's life, but the center of it, and everything else orbits. The code does not ask a member to love the club more than his family. It asks him to answer the club first, every time, and to accept that the two demands will sometimes stand in the same doorway. What makes the Goldsmith story the perfect proof is what it cost, and who paid. Pee-wee led with his fists, the chapel cameras caught everything, and the law took its time, and then took the family. The president who had walked out of his son's wedding for the club got 2 to 5 years. His son got 16 months to 4. And then came the ending that shows what the code gives back. After his arrest, Pee-wee Goldsmith gave a statement to the police. One crack in the silence, and the Hells Angels expelled him. The man who had chosen the club over his own child's wedding day. Thrown out of the organization he had given everything to. The club took the wedding, took the freedom, and then took the membership too. That is the bargain at the bottom of the 1% world, and every man on both sides of every story in this video accepted it with open eyes. The club gives a man brotherhood, identity, and a name that makes rooms go quiet, and in exchange it takes first claim on everything he has, his time, his family, his freedom, and sometimes his life. The men who keep the code call that loyalty. The men who broke it learned there is no severance package. Either way, the club collects. 10 rules, no handbook, no constitution. Just a code passed down across 7 decades, and every rule on it was written in blood after someone broke it and the club paid the price. The patch on a 1%er's back is not a symbol of rebellion. It is proof that every man in the room trusts him with their freedom. But knowing the code is one thing. There are men who took it further than anyone, who fired military rockets at their enemies, ran empires from prison cells, and killed rival presidents on their own doorsteps. Click the next video to meet the most dangerous bikers Europe ever produced.